Okay, so I've come back into our pseudo project here that we've kind of been building as we go along to do the review of this chapter. So we looked at layout techniques, such as using a tracer image to save us time in laying our stuff out, which is really great. I mean, you can get it super accurate in no time flat. And we looked at white space and negative space, so leaving some space around the outsides and between our objects, as well as offsetting any type of big clusters of objects with nice open spaces to create balance within our projects and visual acuity, so that basically people can go from one place to the other in the project without having to think about it. If you put too much clutter in your project, their eyes will have to do a lot of work, and they'll never feel really comfortable using your project for what you want them to use it for. So basically it's a matter of communication. If you want your people to be comfortable and get a lot of value out of your project, then you have to consider that in the design process and make some allowances for that by sticking to some of the techniques like white space and negative space that make things easier to read and easier to manage. Okay, so we went on next to group lock and pin, and we learned how to group objects, and we learned about workflow. For example, I was saying that I like to group objects into smaller groups such as buttons, and then I'll break them apart and add another object such as the logo, and then I'll align that, and then I'll maybe break that apart and add another larger object like a screen, and then group them all together and align them to the stage. But I want you to basically experiment with it and find whatever your best workflow for yourself is. That works for me. It doesn't mean it'll work for you. It's a good starting point though. And as for locking, I like to lock my objects. So we've got our buttons in place here in our project. Oops, I accidentally double-clicked the page. And I can select them all. Oh, I see. Sorry, we actually had them all locked. So if I go to unlock all, there we go. I can grab them now and go to Object, Lock, Selection, or All Objects in this case, because our page only contains the button objects. So I'll go Lock All Objects. So that's something I like to do, but again, you guys might want to unlock those and pin them instead. So I'll select them all and go to Object, Pin, Selection. And in this case, if you'll recall, we can still go back and select them and change their properties and their actions, even though they are locked in place. Whereas you cannot do that with locking. So we group them in our workflow to get everything aligned and laid out, and then we lock or pin them once we've got them in place where we want them. Then we moved on and we learned about aligning and arranging things. So for example, our buttons here, I'm going to unpin them. For our buttons, when they got a little bit out of whack like this, we were able to go ahead and automatically just select them all, and with a couple of clicks here we were able to align them to center and distribute them vertically. And then we could just pop them into place and off we go. So we also learned about arranging. So in the Pages palette, again, I'm just going to put some buttons on top of each other, and you guys will recall in the Pages palette we learned to, in the Objects palette we learned to shift these things around so that we can create a Z order or a stacking order. And we also learned to do that by using the View Toolbar's Arrange toolbar. And we also learned to do that by going to Object Arrange. Okay, so that was alignment and arrangement. And then we also learned about page properties. So we went ahead and we touched on adding images as backgrounds here, and the image modes and the background colors and whatnot, as well as the transitions, which we did one of, if you remember, the dissolve with the button, and the actions that we can attach. And then the last thing we did was we went through the inheritance and we learned how to centralize our resources to central pages for multi-page projects. So that was this chapter. I hope you guys are starting to get a sense of the workflow and get some value out of these lessons, and we'll move ahead to the next chapter.